All right, let's go ahead and grab a seat. Side's a little sleepy this morning. You guys sat down pretty early. What's going on? All right. Hey, if you got a Bible, let's go. We're going to go Psalm 105. Psalm 105. If you got a church Bible, that's on page 504. And Genesis 39. That's on page 33. Hey, my name is Josh Carstensen. Welcome. We doing all right this morning? Yeah. Highs, lows, all of it in between. Welcome to church. Hey, as you're turning there, I would also say, if you do not have a journal, man, we want you to have one. It's a gift. Grab it on the way in. There's a stack of them on the table here. Really, it's just a simple tool to be able to write notes on, to have those notes for future, and then to engage with it throughout the week, right? Sunday morning is important. Like, this is a very important God-ordained, God-commanded gathering. He says, do not forsake the assembly. Like, this is an important place to be, and he wants us to take our faith seriously at home. And this is just a small tool to be able to say, how can I engage with my faith at home? And this will give us different questions to ask, different ways to engage with the things that we're learning. And so a lot of effort goes into that, and it's as good as it's used. So I would just encourage you to use it. Hey, we're jumping in today. We are in the middle of a great and heinously awful story. I really want us to do our best. I said this last week or a couple weeks ago. Try not to go ahead in your mind, especially if you know the story. Like, it's so easy to jump ahead. If you know the story, it's so easy to go, everything's going to work out. He's going to be okay. Like, again, that's not how we view our life. Like, if you're a believer, you know that one day you will be in heaven. Doesn't mean when someone's going through something hard, you just tell them, hey, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be okay. Like, be present in the season that you're in. And in this season, Joseph is in it. There's a lot that's going on here. So to kind of catch us up, we remember last week, if you were here with us, we were introduced to kind of 17-year-old Joseph, and we started at the very end of the chapter, where at the end of the chapter, he ends up in chains. He was sold into slavery by his brothers, right? Like, that is significant. You don't need to go there yet, please. So he's sold into slavery by his brothers. So as he's sold into slavery by his brothers, you've got all these things going on, like all the trauma, all the drama of the family. You've got the reality, if you look really deep, that the people he was sold into slavery to were his great uncle's clan, so that's got problems. We asked, like, how does he get sold into slavery? What leads him to that moment? And what led him to that moment was a myriad of things, right? We talked about how the reality is, no matter where we are, there's 100 things that put us there, but we looked at 2 reasons that ultimately brought him there. Last week, we looked at absent dads, and we said, hey, there was an absent father in this story, right? If Joseph's dad, Jacob, was kind of an in-tune father, never would he have sent Joseph there. Like, never would the dynamics of the family had been what they were, but dad's kind of just in it for himself. We see this over and over. We gave a number of different examples. And we talked about how for you and I, hey, whether you're a mom, whether you're a dad, whether you're just a friend, the importance of being present, right? The heart of God to be a father to the fatherless, the heart for the church to come alongside those who have absent dads, because all of us have broken family dynamics somewhere, right? And so we saw that the absentee father played a role into putting Joseph in the spot he was in. We also talked about the dynamics of envy and how it's really easy to be envious. Right? For Joseph's brother, obviously dad had a favorite, and in that favorite, that caused them to just be frustrated and angry, and ultimately so angry that they were willing to almost kill their brother, but ultimately sell him into slavery. And we're talking about how it's easy to be envious. It's easy. Like I was thinking the other day, I got to drive my friend's new truck. It's not a truck, it's a toy. It's a brand new Raptor. It is so fun. It would be really easy for me to be envious of that. It's easy to look at people in our lives and say, wow, you seem to be doing well. Like, that must be nice. What's that like? It's easy to be envious of all kinds of things, but when we are envious of others, what happens? A, we're blind to their reality and the things that they're going through. And B, it robs us of what God has given to us, right? When we look at someone else's life and we're like, man, what would it be like for my life to be like that? It doesn't give us the ability to enjoy what God's given us. And so we see those dynamics being played out in the story of Joseph last week. And today, as we get into this, we're going to see different dynamics. And again, we're going to start at the end of 39 with our first observation of God's providence. And I'm going to ask the same question. How does Joseph get there? Right? Natalie read us the story. How does he get there? How does Joseph, like really in a situation where he should have gotten a trophy, how does he end up in prison? Like, how does that happen? To start kind of the first observation of God's providence, I want to give a ultimate reason why this happens. And again, there's a lot of reasons. The obvious one being, well, he's falsely accused of rape. Like, that's a great way of ending up in prison. But there's something else going on in this story. There's something that's much bigger than what's happening just in the different parts that people are playing. So now let's go to Psalm 105. Thank you, it was up there earlier. Let's go Psalm 105, starting in verse 16. And let's see God's hand in how Joseph gets to where he was. So here we go. This is Psalm 105, starting in verse 16. When he, right, that he being God, when God summoned a famine on the land and broke all supply of bread, he had sent a man ahead of them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. Okay, just look at that real quick. He had sent. Verse 17, he had sent. So this is God sending a man ahead of them. Verse 18, his feet were hurt with fetters. His neck was put in a collar of iron until what he had said came to pass. The word of the Lord tested him. Psalm 105 just said something that should make a lot of us really uncomfortable. Because here's Joseph. He is in prison. He was sold into slavery by his brothers, and the writer of Psalm 105 just said, and who was responsible for it? God was. God sent a famine. God sent Joseph in fetters and shackles, and now he is in prison. God's providence is the theological doctrine that every single thing that happens primarily happens through firsthand cause of God. Which, again, is nice to say when things are going well, right? You win the lottery and you're like, sweet, Lord, thank you. Your providence, you clearly wanted me to win. But when you end up in prison for doing nothing wrong, in fact, for doing the right thing, the Bible just told us that God put him there. We're going to do a deep dive in this whole doctrine of providence in the middle of November when we get to the very end of the story of Joseph, because it's a theme that's significant and massive throughout the whole story. But it's a doctrine that we need to start thinking about throughout this story, and it's a doctrine that's really important for our lives today, that every single thing that happens because God says, hey, I want this to happen. Right? And there's nuance of what I mean by God saying, I want this to happen, right? Because God doesn't cause anything that's evil, right? But he allows all things to happen. And we know that God works all things together for good for those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. So the providence of God says that any situation that you're in, any season that you're in, the primary reason is because God said so. Right? Again, you should ask yourself a lot of questions. Well, what does that mean for human responsibility then? Right? If I do something that's morally apprehensible, does that mean I shouldn't be morally responsible? Absolutely not. We're going to see over and over, humans have free will. We have choices to make. Those choices have real consequences. Hence, Joseph being in prison because he's accused of something he didn't do. But at the same time, it's true that God is a God of providence. So why should this matter to me? It matters for a lot of reasons. Practically, it's actually a really practical doctrine. It hit me 3 different times this week as I'm thinking about providence, and I'm thinking about these moments where I'm going, seriously, God, why? Right? Because this is how it hits us. 3 times this week. The first time was actually a couple weeks ago. I'm looking for a new door in my garage. So I've been scouring for a new door. It's a massive door. I need like an 8-foot wide by 8-foot tall door. And they're massively expensive, so I'm looking on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. I find one, finally find the one that I want, and it says 8 feet by 8 feet. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I get this thing home? You know, I got a 6-foot truck bed, like moving glass, that's not easy. So I call a friend who's in the glass world and say, hey, how do I move this thing? Like, what's the best way to do it? And he goes, hey, tell you what, I got a glass truck. I'll meet you out there. We'll go figure it out. So we take the 2-hour adventure to go get this huge glass door. We get there, everything looks good. We bring it home. I get it to my house. We're unloading this thing. I'm putting it in my garage, and I realize while we're putting it in my garage, this thing's not 8 feet tall. Like, I know that my garage door is not 8 feet tall, and this thing kind of easily fits underneath it. It's 7 feet tall. And I think to myself, you're an idiot, Josh. You didn't measure. God, why? Why did I just spend all this time trying to figure this all out? Now I'm stuck with some door. What do I do here? God, why? Another thing that happened this last week is in January, I went to Costco, bought the old TurboTax, getting ready for taxes. Always buy the physical copy. Don't know why. That's what I do. It's just about time to file. I'm looking everywhere for the physical copy of TurboTax. There's only a couple places where I would possibly put it. Cannot find the thing. I'm scouring my house. I'm like, seriously? God, like, please help me. I call our office lady, and I say, hey, Lisa, can you scour my office? Can you look through my drawers? Can't find it anywhere. This last week, open up our car, open up the glove box. Oh, TurboTax, there you are. I had to buy it twice. I even called Costco. I was like, hey, I know you have a great return policy. Can I return something that I didn't use but I can't find? Like, it seemed reasonable. It's digital. Like, I mean, it's a thing. They weren't going for it. It's like, okay, Lord, here's a copy of 2024 tax return. Great, perfect. Last thing that happens is this week I was invited to hang out with some new friends, and they want to play pickleball. And it's like Monday. It's like Monday, my day off playing pickleball, which first of all, like I feel like I'm not quite old enough to play pickleball on my one day off, but I'm there and new friends. I'm like, okay. I tell my wife, I tell one of the friends, I say, I feel like we should be doing something like a little more hardcore. Let's go dirt biking, let's go hunting, but pickleball, okay. But I'm in, I like it. Some new friends. What's up, Mike? And so I'm getting ready for this. We're out playing. We're a half hour in, and all of a sudden, like, I'm lunging for the ball, and it feels like someone hit me in the back of the leg, and there's no one behind me, and then I'm on the ground, and I'm hurt. And I'm looking around at all the other 67-year-olds. They're having fun playing, and I'm on the ground, and I'm going, God, I know what a torn calf's like, because this happened 4 years ago, and seriously, Lord, like, really? And it's really easy for us in those moments to just go like, why? But it's in those moments where we just don't know why, where we can go, okay, God, I trust that you are for me. I trust that you knew that I would be on the ground here. Like, this isn't where I want to be. Like, I feel like I did all the things. Like, I went on a run last week. I did the calf races. I stretched twice before pickleball. Like, I feel like I shouldn't have happened. But God, I can actually find some peace that in the situation that I'm in, that you are not blind to it, right? So whatever is going on in life, right? Whether you won the lottery this week, if so, let's go. We got a good thing we can work on that. Anyways, or whether or not this week, like maybe life's not going that great, like the providence of God says, hey, he knows what he's doing, right? And there's something to be learned through it. And so the question is for Joseph as he's in prison, okay, God, you're doing something here. Like you are leading in a way that, hey, I don't see, but I can trust you in that. Now, how does Joseph get to that spot? He gets to that spot primarily through the second thing that we're going to observe, and that's through God's presence. How does he get to the spot where he can say, okay, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I know that you're good. We see this through his experience of God's presence. Now, the presence of God is something that is everywhere in this chapter. Right? Primarily, if you grew up in the church, you think of this chapter and you're like, man, Potiphar's wife, what a crazy. And that's like kind of maybe one of the things that you're thinking of, but you cannot see this chapter and ignore the presence of God. It's everywhere. It's in the beginning. It's in the end. The presence of God is everywhere. Let's go verse 1. Verse 1 of chapter 39, we see the presence of God. We see these words 4 times in this chapter that God was with Joseph. Right now, Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, right? Most people say he's the head executioner. An Egyptian had bought him from the Ishmaelites. Again, like, put yourself in that place. You are on, like, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be in a spot where people are bidding for you. Like, it's easy to read. It's hard to imagine. He is sold, and it says this. It says, the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. Right, you jump down to verse 21 into 23, and later in the story, like Natalie read, like God's with him. He's with him as he is leading the house. He's with him when he's in prison. And everything that he does, God's like, I'm blessing you. Like, it's going to succeed. Right, so let's talk about what it means that God is with him. Like, what does that mean and what does it not mean? Let's talk about that with us for just a minute. What does it mean that God is with us? You go to the very last words of Jesus. So before Jesus leaves earth, ironically, these are the last words out of his mouth. He says, "Behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." And then he's out of here. Right? Now, what does that mean? What does it mean for Jesus to say, "Behold, I am always with you"? Right? You go back to John 14, and Jesus makes a promise. He says, here's the deal. I'm about to leave, and when I leave, I'm going to send you my Spirit. And so the theological implication is that if you are a believer, if you put your faith in Jesus Christ, that God's Spirit, the same Spirit that empowered Jesus to do what he did, that Spirit rests in you and I all the time. Right? So everywhere that I go, at every moment, God is with me. Right? So it doesn't matter if like I'm riding my bike, if I'm hanging out with my kids, it doesn't matter if I'm at the movies, it doesn't matter if I'm sitting on the couch flipping through 10 minutes trying to figure out what to watch, it doesn't matter if I'm in like work, it doesn't matter. God is always with us. But the question is, am I always with God? Now there's a huge difference between God always being with me and me always being with God. Because God's with me all the time, regardless. He's always here, right? If you're a New Testament believer, he's always here, but I can choose to be present with him or not, right? I can choose to be present with God if I'm frustrated with my kids, right? When I'm having breakfast, I can choose, what do I want my mind to be thinking about? If it's after dinner and I'm at the sink and I'm doing the dishes, I have a choice. I can choose to be with God or not. And I love that. I'm like, okay, God, like, thank you for the dishes. Thank you for the fact that I have food on the table. Thank you for the gift that is dish soap. You ever tried to do dishes without dish soap? I'm just saying, it is a massive gift. Easy on the hands, hard on grease. It's amazing. It's so good. Like, there's a way to be praising God through the normal mundane that just says, God, you're incredible. Like, what a gift. I had an opportunity for this yesterday. I'm sorry for anyone in here who's ever had to change out a kitchen faucet. It's the most annoying thing ever. I've done plenty of them. Yesterday, I'm trying to change out this kitchen faucet. You've got the garbage disposal. You've got all the plumbing under there. You're backwards. You're upside down. And you're like going like this, trying to figure it out. And I tell you what, like, my level of frustration is just rising. And I've done this many a time. And then I realized, like, oh yeah, God's with me right now. And I literally out loud, I was just like, okay, God, like, I know you love me in this moment. Like, I know you were a stone worker. I'm sure you had moments where you're just trying to figure out how to hit this angle. I don't know, he probably already like had it perfect. But I know you're with me. And I went from being super frustrated to like being totally okay in the moment. Doesn't matter what situation you're in. God is always with us, but we have a decision to make. Am I going to be with God? Right? Am I going to choose to be with God? God was present with Joseph, and Joseph was present with God. And what happens when Joseph's present with God? Right? What happens is God's blessing goes with him. Right? And we see this forever, because what does being present with God, like, what's the outcome of that? The outcome of that is a life of obedience to God. John 14 makes it clear. He says, hey, what does presence equate? It equates to obedience. Right? So follow me here for just a minute. If you are present with God, you see the world the way God sees the world. Right? So you treat people the way God would treat people. You act with integrity. You act with honesty. Like, think about who Joseph was in his work environment. He had zero incentive to be employee of the month. Right? He's not going to get a promotion. He's not going to get a raise. He is a slave. And yet, he's the guy showing up early. He's the guy staying late. He's the guy who's like, hey, I'll do that for you. I'll work hard because you're not my boss. God's my boss. And I'm present with him. And I'm not working for you. I'm working for him. Right? And when you do that, people take notice. And he gets promoted. And he's literally given the keys to the prison. Like, that's not a normal thing. Like, in his world, every other prisoner is going like, what can I get for me? How can I take advantage of whatever the situation is around me? And he's going, nope, I'm living for you, God. I'm living a life of integrity, and God's blessing goes with that. Observation number 3, when striving to be with God, there will be constant temptations. Right? This is obviously a big theme in this chapter. There are temptations everywhere. Now let's go back to the beginning of the book of Genesis. So 37 chapters earlier in Genesis, in the beginning of Genesis, God creates the world. As he's created the world, we get this picture, this story where God makes a garden, and it describes him as being with Adam and Eve in this garden. And in the very middle of the garden, God places something. You remember what he places in the middle of the garden? He places temptation, which is so frustrating. And it's this moment where you're like, God, don't you think you could have placed that tree like on the far corner of the garden? Like to where like you're not having to walk by it every single day? Like, so I don't know about you, but often when I think about the garden, I'm just like, it must have been so cool. It must have been so great. And they had to walk by the tree of knowledge of good and evil every single day. And it's just shining in all of its beauty. Like, that's the original algorithm. Like, God knew what they wanted. It's right there. And he's saying, don't do the thing that's right in the middle that you wake up and you see every day, right? When you and I, when we're on our phones and we're like, oh, that looks interesting, right? When we see a friend, we're like, oh, that looks interesting, right? Like, temptation is everywhere, right? When it's weekend number 3 and you haven't been to church and your friend calls you up and says, hey, let's go hike Mary's Peak today. You're like, oh, that's an interesting temptation. Right? When you look at your bank account and you're like, oh, I'd like to keep more of this for me, that's a temptation. Right? And on. Temptation is everywhere. That's pre-fall. We're tempted. Right? For Joseph, man, this temptation was everywhere. You know the story? The Bible says the dude's handsome and jacked. Like, nowhere else does it use both of those terminologies to describe someone, both well in form and in face. That's Joseph. And apparently, like, that's a problem, right? Because he can't get away from this woman who wants him, right? So he's stuck. He can't leave his job, right? He's not, like, filing a harassment complaint to HR. He can't, like, get a different shift. He is a man of integrity, and yet, like, this person is pursuing him again and again and again. Like, this is a problem. Right now, there's all kinds of layers of temptation here. Right now, I did a little poll this week, and I asked a number of different people. I probably asked 20 different people, what do you think Joseph's temptation was? And I got wildly different answers depending upon if I asked a man or a woman. Just throwing this out there. I asked one group of people, do you think Joseph was actually tempted to sleep with this woman? And one group of people said, oh, absolutely, he was tempted. I'll let you figure out if that was the guy or the girl. That very much could have been a temptation of his, right? For a number of reasons, right? Obviously, here's a guy, he's far away from home, he's in his mid-20s, he's single, he's lonely. There's 100 reasons why that might be a legit temptation, right? There's other temptations that some people believed. In fact, I did not talk to a single woman who said, hey, that would have been a real temptation. Every woman I talked to said the temptation is self-preservation, right? In the moment where he's going like, well, shoot, maybe I should do this so that I don't get in trouble, right? And you think about the world of slavery, and you think about the world that Joseph was in, he is in a place where masters abuse slaves all the time. And like a lot of abuse victims, sometimes it's a level of self-preservation. It's like, well, I don't know how to get out of this. I guess we'll just go for it because what else can I do? And so perhaps that was a temptation for Joseph. I don't know, right? The text doesn't tell us exactly what his temptations are. There could have been 100 of them. But the fact of the matter is, this is a temptation on all kinds of different levels. But for someone who's tempted, as we learned already, Joseph was with God and God was with Joseph. So what was his reaction? His reaction was to say from chapter 39, verse 9, he responds and he says this. He says, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? right? In his moment of all the potential temptations, and there's a lot of different temptations, where's his mind? His mind is on, hey, what's right? What's the right thing to do here? And ultimately, through all these temptations, Joseph he's going to walk in integrity, and he's going to do the right thing. Now, why would God put him in that place? Right? We're talking about providence. Why would God allow that to happen? In Psalm 105, we read it earlier. I want you to see it one more time, that these temptations serve a purpose. In Psalm 105, I want you to hear this. I'm going to go back to verse 17. He had sent a man ahead of them. This is God sending Joseph, who was sold as a slave. His feet were hurt with fetters. His neck was put in a collar of iron. Until what the Lord had said came to pass, the word of the Lord tested him. Right? Why does God allow temptation for you and I? And why is it everywhere? This is God testing Joseph. Right? Why would God test Joseph? Right? Why would God test you and I? Right? Because if you know how the story continues, you know that God's preparing Joseph for a massive place of influence. In a few chapters, we're going to read that Joseph is going to become the second most leading command in all of the nation. Right? And he's going to have opportunity to abuse all kinds of power in that role. He's going to have opportunity to take whatever he wants from whoever he wants it from. And yet God's saying, hey, let's see in a moment of temptation, let's see if you're going to do the right thing or not. And if you pass this test, man, I've got something for you. Right? We see this multiple places. This is a direct quote from Jesus in Luke 16, verse 10, that if you're faithful in the little things, God will give you more opportunity. Right? So you think about the temptations that are in front of us. And again, all of us have different temptations. Are you being faithful in the little temptations that are in front of you today so that God can give you more blessing in the future down the road? Right? Because if we're not faithful today, what are we doing? We're stealing from our future selves of what God could do through us. But Joseph is faithful in the little things so that God gives him more opportunity in the big things. Now, to land this plane, Joseph's faithful, and it's a great story in some ways. But at the end of chapter 39, it's really not that great of a story. Because now he is in prison for years. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in prison for years. And he's in this spot where he's just like, okay, Lord, like I did the right thing everywhere along the way, and it hasn't been anything but struggle. Like, what's up with that? See, the truth is, the final point is sometimes to be a follower of Jesus is to actually be like Jesus and to experience the pain and persecution that Jesus went through, right? Because you think about the story of Jesus and the story of Joseph, and there are massive parallels, right? You think about, here's someone who was sent by God, right? Both Jesus and Joseph were sent by God. Here's two people who walked in integrity. Clearly, Jesus did it better, but two people who were betrayed, two people who were sold, right? Two people who went through the worst of the worst. Why? Because God was doing something bigger through it. And to be a follower of Jesus is to sometimes be like Joseph and is to sometimes be like Jesus. So what does that mean for us? It means to be a servant and a steward. Right? This is our theme. We're talking about it kind of every week. We're trying to land on this idea of God is calling us to be a servant and a steward. If you're a Christian and your life is never hard, you're probably not being like Jesus enough. I'm just saying that. And if you're in a season where life is really hard, guess what? Jesus has been there too, right? And in this story, Joseph has been there too. And guess what? God knows what he's doing. The story's not over. He's going to continue to work through it to bring about something for his good and his glory. So as I finish, I'll just ask these simple questions. Where do I need to find comfort in God's providence? It's a wild theological doctrine, but it's one that gives us a lot of peace. Where do I need to lean into God's presence in my life? Where do I need to flee temptation? And where do I need to be a servant and steward of Christ? Would you pray with me? Father God, we are a people who humbly want to come before you and just recognize your providence in all things. And yes, those are hard words to say, especially when life's not going the way that we'd want it to go. But they're also incredible words to say, especially when life's not going the way we want it to go. God, in that, I pray that we'd be a people who lean into your presence. God, we know that for the believer, you're always with us. And that when you're always with us, we have an opportunity to then always be with you. And so for us who are distracted by 100 things, God, I pray that we would lay aside the distractions and that we'd say, thank you for this soap. God, thank you for being with me in the midst of trying to parent or grandparent or husband or wife or date or be single. God, thank you for being with me when I feel alone, when I feel overwhelmed. God, you are with me and I want to be with you. God, for the temptations that are around us, and there are so many, just like envy last week. God, help me to not be blind to my temptations. Help me to recognize that temptation is a test. God, and that you want to give more, you want to be a good father, but you're not going to give us more if we keep failing in the small things. You just won't. God, I thank you for the example of Joseph who was faithful in the small things, and you gave him massive opportunity. I pray that we would be a people who are faithful in the small things, and we could be faithful in much. And God, for us as well, I pray that we would recognize our position as servants and stewards, as people who are called as Christians to live like Christ. And that's not always the good times, it's often the hard times, but God, we know that you have a plan and you're with us. We love you, Jesus. We pray this in your powerful name. Amen. Love you guys.